I just got married, and I think there's something wrong with my mother-in-law. Well, I've got some answers, and a lot has happened. I don't even know how to describe it all. Colette and I didn't quite manage to escape. We snuck out the door, her holding me up as my body was so limp and weak, and eventually made it out to John's car. Mine was nowhere to be found. He must have moved it. He probably sold it or dumped it into a lake or something. Maybe he was planning to put my body in it first. Colette started the car, and we thought we were home free. I finally let out a sigh of relief. I was going to get out of this nightmare. No more wallpaper, no more wailing women, no more medication. That's when Colette filled me in. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, Jane, and I'm sorry you're going through this. I was once in the same place you are, you know. A smiling young bride with a handsome new husband, excited for where life would take me. So that was the wedding photo. It was real. So you were never John's mother? I asked. She shook her head with a slight chuckle. No. I'm younger than him. He's a lunatic. The only thing we can do is get away. This is the first opportunity I've had to escape, but I knew I had to bring you with me. I couldn't leave you with that, she said. I was slowly putting the pieces together in my mind. So, you were his first wife, but there have been more in between? How could you stand that? How could you just let him pretend you were his mother? I was slurring a little, I knew, but I needed to know, woman to woman. A few tears rolled down her cheeks. This wasn't the plan, you know. We were going to travel the world, have children, do all the things a young couple is supposed to do. But John began staying out late, sometimes coming home as the sun rose covered in dirt. I had no idea what was going on. I thought he was cheating on me, but it was so much worse. When I finally discovered what he'd been doing, well, he threatened my life. He threatened my family's lives. He was disappointed that I couldn't bear children, you see. That's all I was to him, an incubator for his future progeny. And so were the last 3 wives. I stared at her hard, not wanting to believe the truth that was buried in her words. The last 3 wives? Dirt on his hands? The missing women Charlotte had warned me about when I first moved out here? What happened to the last 3 wives, Colette? I stammered, trying to sound stronger than I was. She just shook her head. I don't know. At first, I thought the first wife must be mad. John had her placed on bed rest, and she started wailing about yellow wallpaper. It just kept getting worse, and then she was gone. I assumed to an institution. But then the same thing happened with the next wife and the next, and now you. It couldn't be a coincidence. Women just don't go mad. It took me a while to process that information. The women in the wallpaper. Were they the wives of the past screaming to be let free? Why did you stay here? Why didn't you try to escape? I managed to sputter. Colette grabbed my face with one hand, staring hard into my eyes while still managing the car. You don't understand how dangerous John is, and it's important that you understand how dangerous he is, Jane. He has so much power. And not just here. He has connections out there too. He can ruin your life. Don't you think I've tried to escape? The monster has all but hobbled me to keep me here. His first failure. I realized she hadn't left this property since she and John first got married. It would have been 20 years? She had no idea. Colette, there has been a lot in the news in this area about women going missing in the forest. Did you know what he was doing? Did you allow it all to happen? I was near screaming at this point, and Colette was still driving, headlights beaming into the dark. What power do you think I have? I've been locked away in the attic for years. The food I gave you, that's all I could sneak away without him noticing. That's why we need to do this quickly. I'm speeding up, she replied. Finally, we reached the entrance to the property, but my heart sank when I saw the large stone gateway with wrought iron fencing I thought was so charming was closed. Locked. What do we do now? I whispered as Colette stopped the car. She turned it off, leaving us in the darkness. We need to go on foot. I think one of the fence posts is loose enough for us to slip through. Do you think you're strong enough? She urged. I was so weak, so tired, and we were so far. It would be forever until we found someone to help us, but it was the only choice. Just as we were squeezing through the fence, we were greeted with the sharp rumbling of a motorcycle motor. We began moving faster, desperately trying to get through, but it was too late. John arrived on an old moped, his face twisted and angry. Mother, what are you doing with Jane? She's too sick to be out here, he shouted. His voice had lost the calm, sure-footed nature I'd come to know. He was panicking. I'm not sick at all, you sadist, I yelled back, but Colette smacked my arm. It's over. If you want to live, play the part. We'll find another way, she whispered. Her face was drenched in tears as she dejectedly made her way back to the car, dragging me along. Colette played nice with John as he drove us back to the house in his car. She made some excuses that she was just taking me for a walk to get some fresh air. I was gobsmacked. She was so terrified of him, and the two were so used to playing this game that they fell right back into it. Well, I wasn't having it. I refused to play the part of the docile wife who did her husband's bidding. When we pulled up to the house, John had to drag me out of the car, and when he tried to gently stroke my face, I bit his finger so hard he bled. Now, Jane, that wasn't very nice, he reprimanded, speaking to me as though I were a child. You're a monster! What is wrong with you? I screeched. Colette quietly withered away back into the house, back into her role, and it infuriated me. As far as I was concerned, she was just as guilty as John. John pushed me to the ground, his eyes wide, his hands shaking. Is this how it's going to be? Are you not going to act like a responsible young woman? Because that's what I married, Jane, not this little brat. Will you uphold your promise to me and be the mother to my children? I shook my head. At this point, I figured I was dead no matter which way I went, so I might as well go out fighting. I'll never be what you're looking for, I said. That was enough to set John off, and I had no energy left to fight as he picked me up and hauled me down to the basement, the floor I'd never been to because the door was always locked. I thought it was probably a cellar where they kept beets and jars and other things, but I let out a small scream as I realized what he was really keeping down here. The first thing that hit me was the stench. It nearly made me vomit. It was so strong and vile. It was rot and disease and dirt and crap and every terrible smell you could think of rolled into one. John didn't seem to notice it as I gagged loudly. He placed me on the cold dirt ground and pulled a cord to flick on the light, and everything around me was illuminated. I was surrounded by bodies. Women's bodies. I couldn't even count how many were there. They were all standing, held up by some sort of apparatus, all in white nightgowns. Just like mine. All with long, dark hair. Just like mine. Except their mouths and nostrils and eyes were sewn up, stitched with delicate care. They were blind and mute, their last screams trapped behind woven lips. These were the wives. These were the women screaming at me from the wallpaper. I realized John had mummified them, kept them here as some sort of shrine to what he had done to them. What is this? I asked, my voice hoarse and croaking. The air was stifling, and I couldn't look anywhere without seeing a woman's face begging me for help I couldn't give. John was busy piling together supplies, some rope, clamps, jars of various fluids, a hairbrush. My body started to panic. He was going to add me to his collection. "John, please," I begged. "You don't have to do this. Just please let me go. I won't tell anyone, I promise." He wasn't even listening to me, just moving about and setting up his station with clinical expertise. The women wailed. With expert precision, John placed me on an old wooden chair and tied me up. I had no energy to struggle, and he knew it. My screams and pleas for help or mercy were barely whispers now. Somewhere inside, I resigned myself to my fate. This was it. Soon, I would be just another wailing woman in the basement, and my cries would torment the next wife. I wondered how he had done everything, how he got away with it. The video of me falling down the stairs could have easily been any of these other women. We all looked so similar. The supplies he could probably get online or take from work. The house was in the middle of nowhere. No one could hear the screams. Would he ever be caught? John stood and looked at me, a horrifying smile pasted on his lips. Pride. He was proud of what he had done, of what he was about to do. He enjoyed watching me struggle and struggle, watching me be too weak to fight back. I couldn't even spit on him. It looked like he was about to say something. Maybe the grand speech that explained it all. How his own mother had abused him and now he hated women, and this was how his mind reconciled it all, whatever. There could be no justification for something like this. But then, just as he opened his mouth to speak, there was a loud bang, and he slowly crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Colette, a cast iron pan in her hands, breathing heavily as she looked at the body on the ground, blood seeping from the wound on his head. "We are leaving, now," she stated, hurriedly untying me from the chair. The rest of what happened is a bit of a blur. We found a jerry can of gasoline and covered the basement in it, including John's body. And Colette tossed a lit match to the trail as we rushed out of the house. I watched the house burn in the rearview mirror as Colette drove us out, the gate now unlocked and open. We were finally free. I felt like I could hear the wailing women thanking us as they burned with John. They were free too. You're probably wondering why we didn't call the police. We could have easily had them catch John in the act, and of course they would arrest him once they saw all the bodies. Or maybe not, depending on how deep his connections were, according to Colette. You can't trust anybody. That's what I've learned throughout all of this. The truth is, we didn't want John to become an infamous killer in the media, because we all know that's what would have happened. His face would have been featured on every TV, on every news website. People would be talking about his deeds for years, spreading the poison of what he did. He doesn't deserve anything more than what he got. And all the missing women didn't deserve to be canonized as martyrs, known forever for being silenced with a needle and thread. Their voices will be heard. Their stories will be told. But in fiction. As a film, perhaps. Nobody needs to know it was real. Colette and I will go our separate ways once I'm able to take care of myself. We both have a lot of healing to do. She's confided in me a lot of the abuse she's been living with for the last 20 years, and it's going to take a lot of work for her to find her new normal. As for me, I'm going to follow my dreams and keep writing movies. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll be in a theater watching one of my films, and you'll know the truth. That true horror, no matter how big or small, comes from a very real place. The darkness hides in each and every one of us. Thank you for all your advice. Stay safe. Jane.